Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest, reacting to some Toronto Raptors news. Obviously, the preseason's just around the corner, so there's a lot of exciting things to look at heading into the season, and the dominant discussion topics over the offseason has been who will step up for the Toronto Raptors. We don't have any big-name free agents coming into the team like we did last year. We have a lot of young guys that could step up, and we just lost our centerpiece and one of our main role players, two of the guys in our starting unit, so there's a lot of speculation on what players could possibly step up, what lineups Nick Nurse is going to throw out there, and we've heard names like Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, Norman Powell, those types of players stepping in who had lesser roles last season, even though Fred was a very significant part of that team, but specifically Norman OG, guys that didn't have the majorest roles come in and, possibly get starting positions this year. And there's been a core group of players that some we know are going to start and some that there's been speculation on. But one guy, you read the title of the video, that kind of gets thrown to the wayside in terms of players that are going to have a huge role on this team is Patrick McCaw. And, a lot of fans of the Toronto Raptors, people that watch this team, people have had mixed feelings on Patrick McCaw. As obviously, he's a great shooter, he's a great athlete, but he's never really been able to put it all together in a Raptors uniform, so to speak, to go out there and really have a impacting presence on the court. And some people really don't like his game, some people like the little things he does and his ability to shoot threes. So, whatever your take is on Patrick McCaw, he's a guy that Nick Nurse is going to look at as a player that's going to have a chance to make an impact, his name on this Raptors rotation. He was quoted on saying that Pat is one of the 8 guys that you can expect to go out there and possibly be a starter for the Toronto Raptors next season. He directly used the word starter, and I know that's going to take a lot of Raptors fans specifically off guard a little bit, because Patrick McCaw, he was a guy that barely had rotation minutes in last season during the regular season. The playoffs, that was kind of taken away. I know there was some stuff going on with Patrick McCaw off the court, so maybe some of that had to do with his even lesser impact in the playoffs. But all that aside, he hasn't really been a name that's been talked about in terms of the core pieces for the Toronto Raptors, and maybe he should be, and maybe he's showing a lot of things that he did this offseason to really up his game and show that he's a real legitimate NBA role player in this league. Nick Nurse has been raving about Patrick McCaw all since training camp has begun. He said just a couple days ago that Patrick McCaw's three-point shooting looks to be tremendously improved, but obviously you can't overreact to that till you see him do it in a game. You could look at a lot of NBA players, even Ben Simmons, he's hitting threes in training camp, so that's not something to run away with, but certainly encouraging. You'd rather hear that than, Nick Nurse say, Patrick McCaw has had a slow start to training camp or something like that. So I'm going to break down what his possible role could be if he's a starter or, if he's an integral rotation piece, because McCaw's a weird player. He's listed in the Golden State, he was always listed as a small forward shooting guard type of player, but last year when he came here, he mostly played the wing when he was on the court, but when Lowry or Fred VanVleet were sometimes off with injury, we saw Patrick McCaw run the backup point guard, and I know that's never a position I thought of Patrick McCaw as playing when he was on Golden State, but seeing him play that role with the Toronto Raptors last year, he didn't look out of place. Apparently, that's been a position that he's played most of his life, coming up through the ranks in basketball. He's long, he's wiry, and honestly, he looks like he has a better feel for the game when he has the ball in his hands, which is surprising because he's mostly made his reputation as being a possible 3-and-D kind of role player in this league. So that's something a lot of Raptors fans took notice to last season, and during these training camp inter-squad games and drills and all that, apparently Patrick McCaw has been playing the point guard and he hasn't looked out of place whatsoever, especially with Kyle Lowry coming off that thumb injury, so he hasn't participated in a lot of training camp. Patrick McCaw is a guy that could be coming in as one of those guys that's going to be ball dominant and setting up plays and being more of a playmaker, or the two positions that we lost for this team, and I think the more natural place Raptors fans would expect Patrick McCaw to come into would be maybe that starting shooting guard position, that starting small forward position. There's been a lot of talk about Fred VanVleet possibly filling that role. Nick Nurse has even brought it up over the summer. We've made a video about it already. Norman Powell, he's a guy that's very much, people have been talking about, is very much impressed during this training camp as well with his overall scoring ability, his ability to get to the rim. Apparently looks a lot more relaxed in terms of his drives, because Norman Powell's always been a guy that can get past his first defender and get to the rim with his first step, but usually he's just so out of control when he gets to the rim, he doesn't finish it. It's good shots, but he just doesn't finish off those easy layups. So if that's something Norman Powell can come into this season with, he's definitely going to be leaving his impressions on Nick Nurse to give him that starting position. And if you look at that small forward spot, I know Rondé is a guy that's more so of a power forward in today's league. That's where he's been mostly playing in Brooklyn, but he's a guy that could certainly, especially if he gets his jump shot going, make his name on that role. OG Anunoby, one of my favorite players, he's looking to bounce back from that tough year last year and really show that same trajectory he promised with his outstanding rookie campaign, being a starter on that almost 60-win team and guarding LeBron in the playoffs. If he can get back on that trajectory, he's certainly going to be looking to fill one of those wing positions. So there's a lot of competition for Patrick McCaw. And if we're just going off last season, just what they showed in terms of their impact on the game, I think one thing that got overlooked with Patrick McCaw is he did all the little things really well. And, I'm not saying this as some sort of meme because he has been on the last 3 championship teams, but he looks like a guy that knows how to play winning basketball. He knows how to fit within an offense of a really well-structured, well-organized team because he passes the ball to a great extent. I mentioned earlier in the video, he's a playmaker. He can read the game really well, and he can shoot the ball. He doesn't make a lot of bad decisions, and his defense, he's always hustling. He always dives to the ball. Aside from that first game where, his first game with the Toronto Raptors when he got absolutely shook by James Harden in that first ever impression we got of him in a Raptors uniform, which was unfortunate. But ever since then, he's shown he's a very quality defender in terms of his scrappiness, his mobility. He might be a little bit undersized when he's guarding bigger players, the bigger threes and the fours of this league, but he can certainly stay with them, and that on-ball defense is absolutely hounding. Nick Nurse even said a lot of this as he went on in his quote, said McCaw plays with a lot of speed. Guys love playing with him. He can direct line drive it. As I mentioned earlier, his shooting looks like it's improved a lot, but you don't know until the lights come on with all that stuff. And, he doubled down on the starting quote. He said, "To me, I feel good about throwing him out there as a starter." And that's a pretty high spot for him, I would say. So that's high praise from Nick Nurse, a guy that's built a reputation for himself as a coach in this league, a championship coach now. He's been with the Raptors organization for the past 5-6 years. He's a good eye for talent. He's being credited with that offensive complete revival we saw a couple years back. And if Nick Nurse sees something in McCaw, sees a development, sees a growth, I think we should be excited as Raptors fans to see what he can give. Now, for my take, do I want to see Patrick McCaw be the full-time starter for this roster? Right now, no. I haven't heard enough about McCaw's drastic improvements to really overarch my excitement about Fred VanVleet or Norman Powell possibly filling that 2 position. I think at the 3, McCaw can play that, but I'd rather see OG with just his physical abilities because I think McCaw right now is the more complete player compared to OG. He's a bit more fluid, a bit more comfortable on the court, but OG's just overall potential, the way his athleticism, his size, his ability, he's shown a really strong ability to shoot that 3 ball as well, and we've seen OG be capable of holding a role within a team on a really good team. The Toronto Raptors, that 59-win squad from 2 years ago, that was a really strong team, and OG stole that role. Norman Powell was supposed to be the starting small forward that year, and OG outplayed him. He showed that he could be consistent in terms of his defense and playing within an offense, and even though last year especially he looked less fluid in comparison to McCaw, I think there's a lot of intangibles that OG has over McCaw, which just me personally, I'd be more excited to see him get the starting position rather than McCaw this season. Let OG deal with some of those speed bumps that you're going to see from a young guy that is really going into his second year. I'm going to write last year off for OG just because of the injuries, the personal stuff, and the appendix, right? This is OG's second season, and see what he can do. So even with everything I said about McCaw, how excited I am to see, he has a lot of those intangibles too, the skill set to be a solid player in this league. Norm, Fred, and OG excite me more at this point, but I do want to see McCaw in the rotation. I don't want to see him fall out like we saw at the end of last year. And, it's going to be tough. The Toronto Raptors are deep this season. We've brought up over the summer about Stanley Johnson, how he's looking to impress this year. He has some great quotes during this media day as well. We could probably make a video about him. Matt Thomas, he's kind of the unpredictable guy that's going to come in and 99% from 3 over in the EuroLeague. Can that translate to the NBA? He's going to be fighting with McCaw for minutes as well. I think right now I take McCaw over those guys, especially where he was with this team last year and all the things that Nick Nurse has been saying about him. Obviously, Nick Nurse knows how to judge basketball talent, so I'd put McCaw higher up in the hierarchy than two of those guys right now. But it's going to be really interesting. That's the main takeaway from this video, and maybe McCaw has taken strides that we won't even expect coming into next year. So let me know what you guys think. Who do you want to see starting on this Toronto Raptors team next year? Do you think McCaw deserves a chance to get some run with the starters with everything you've seen from him as a Toronto Raptor? Let me know in the comment section below. You're the best for making it this far. Check out the Twitter, the Instagram, all that cool stuff. I'm signing off. Before I end it off, obviously, no face cam today. Obviously, Riker and I, for long listeners of the podcast, not obviously, Riker and I are in school, so sometimes this format's a lot easier to just put out quickly when we see some news. So we're going to be free-flowing with how the videos are going to be presented this year, and yeah, we love your feedback, so keep letting us know. We're reading it, and we want to be able to put out the best content we can for you guys. So anyways, as always, you're the best. I'm signing out. Cheers.